Nice to see so many folks here. We'll open up the meeting in our accustomed fashion by doing a Pledge of Allegiance to our flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And the city clerk will take the roll, please.
Council members E.J. Curry.
Here.
Molly Carmody. Here. Cody Colt is absent. Ted Stillwell.
Here.
Tracy Wood.
Here.
Jody Pinto.
Here.
Terry Kaminsky. Here. Mayor J.W. Foster.
Here. And we had heard, of course, from Council Member Colt celebrating the birth of his child.
I move we allow Mr. Colt the evening to enjoy that. I move we excuse him.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So we have a quorum, and we have now before us an agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
I move we approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There we go. I promised Megan that I'd get her home to her homework as soon as I possibly could. So that's why we put one of our favorite things to do right at the beginning. This is where we have our special presentations and as we know, we work with the Yelm Community Schools and the Rotary Club and some local business sponsors to celebrate one of our amazing high school students every month. And this year, Megan Powell was chosen. And if you can put your family member down for a moment and come on up to the dais, I'd like to tell them all about you. Well, not all about you, because this is only a brief summary. So the Rotary Club of Yelm and the City of Yelm are honored to announce our March 2019 Student of the Month, Megan Powell. Megan is another outstanding Yelm High School senior. She's involved in yearbook and has also been involved in leadership on campus. Outside of school, Megan spends time at camps for children battling cancer. And Megan has attended several camps, most recently as a camp counselor. She has a positive attitude and wants to make Yelm High School a safe and welcoming place for all students. Megan's plans after high school include a career in the medical field as a paramedic or trauma-trained medic. Megan is currently undecided on attending Central Washington University or enlisting in the Army. I'm sure whichever way you go, you're an asset to that group. But congratulations to Megan, and give her a round of applause here. And then if you step up front here, and we'll just put off hers for her family photography. Cash, you got a camera on her? Oh. All right, so I got Rotary on both sides of us. You're wondering who these people are. And Megan and Council, if you can't see the camera, they can't see you. Look right at Grant.
Should look at Grant. I was looking at Michael.
Come on up here. Nice. All right. You're very welcome. I'll give this back to you.
Congratulations.
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 Nicely done, Megan.
Congrats.
Now, Megan, we always offer this up to our students of the month. We know that attending a city council meeting can be the most exciting thing that can go on in a week. That's why so many folks are here. But you probably have a lot of things going on at home, so feel free to take off at any time that you'd like. But your family has to stay. I'm kidding. Very good. April also brings another special moment for us as a Tree City ourselves for how many years now, Tammy?
23.
All right, 23 years, which is, I think so. I think it happened the first year I moved into town. We will read the proclamation that we do to announce our Tree City status, and then we'll talk a little bit about how we're going to celebrate that. So, a proclamation from the City of Yelm. Whereas in 1872, Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for planting of trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cutting heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife, and whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products, and whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community, and whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal, now, therefore, it is hereby proclaimed that April 26th, 2019, is Arbor Day, and the month of April 2019 is Arbor Month in the city of Yelm. And I invite the council and citizens of Yelm to our Arbor Day celebration at 11 a.m. this Friday, April 26th, at the Yelm Community Center. Further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. And tree lovers all applaud that at this point. Very excited. And I know that we have a really special Arbor Day celebration planned for this Friday, if you can come out to it. I know it's in the middle of the day, but last year, Tammy, would we have a couple of hundred people show up for that? It's remarkable. We're one of the largest Arbor Day celebrations in the state. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. Okay, this is not having the same problem that you were having, Joe, on this. Now it's giant.
You want a paper copy?
I think I got, if I just stop it. Grant. Yes, please. All right, thank you very much. We are at our public comment period of the meeting. And for those of you who don't know, there are 2 times when the council invites citizens to speak to them about various matters of importance to them. If there's an item on the agenda, we would wait for you to be called upon to speak at that time. If it's not on the agenda and you'd like to address the council, now would be a great time. We do ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, and there'll be a timer up there to help guide you on that. And we encourage you to come talk to the council. So the first card I have in my hand is Robert from the UFO Fest / Triad Theater. I do believe that you want to go first?
Yes, I can.
Or we could switch the cards and we'll ask Cameron Jane to address the council on the same topic.
Thank you.
You don't know what we're saying with this.
Okay, if you need to follow up, you will, right?
Oh, I will.
Okay.
Regardless.
Cameron?
I have my own.
Cameron Jane, excuse me.
Nice to be
Welcome.
here, Mayor. I would like to say, and nice to be here with my esteemed city council members, but I'm afraid I can't say that at this time. I'm Cameron Jane. I am the one who is the director and the creator of the Triad Arts Theater. And I would like to ask and clarify a few things. What I'd like to first ask is, Molly, did you or did you not accuse me on Facebook under the title of councilman to say that I am a liar and a cheat?
No, I did not.
Oh, you did not. Oh, I must have read it wrong, but it was in there. Thank you. Thank you. So I have a problem here. So you are saying you did not. Somebody else wrote it for you.
Clarify, please. I edited my post to take that sentence out.
Yes, you did. You did. The next post that you put up said that you believe and feel everything that you said, and you also would move heaven and earth to see that Jane would not have any money at all for the UFO Fest or for anything with the theater or whatever. It doesn't matter that, but the fact that you said heaven and earth, you have an agenda, my dear.
Yes.
Yes, you do. And it might be cautious of you to not use your title as council person when you are slandering a person. That is my feeling right there. I would also like to say to the mayor. Did I or did I not come in to you and talk to you about trying to get the park as a home base for the UFO Festival? I want all of you to hear this, because my integrity and the integrity of a theater that has been doing nothing but good for the community is being threatened here. So did I or did I not come before I had the article in the Squally Valley News?
You sure did.
And did we discuss many alternatives? And we tried working it through at the park even.
We did.
Yes, and we couldn't do it because two things. We could not adapt. We could not do it on a Sunday because there is another rental that happens for the rest of the year. So we couldn't do it then. We couldn't do it past 10 o'clock because of ordinances. So I would have a Friday and a Saturday to have this UFO Fest. I spent over $84,000 for a UFO Fest, 2 years. 2 years to put you all on the map, to put me on the map, to put the community on the map. And you are bickering about a lousy $6,000, which barely paid for my potties, the porta potties. And I'm talking to you, Joe. I'm going to specifically refer to you too. I did file the applications that were required. What I didn't file as far as financial things was a loan that I had applied for. Not a loan, it was money from the county. And I never put a dime or money or anything, any account for. I was returned that and said it was incomplete. And it was incomplete because I had 2 hours to file it because I was too busy putting on a show, the UFO Fest. So I did not apply and did not get that money for that particular loan. And it was just that I wanted the county to know that we needed improvements for that theater and for that building to make it more safe. And that's all. And I figured I would have more time for the following year to go to it. But I just wanted it on the records. That's all I had time for. So I wanted that clear for you, Joe, because I know you were concerned about that.
Joe has a comment to you.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
First of all, Jane, I was very critical on my Facebook. I never called you out personally, but I called UFO Fest out. Mm-hmm. The biggest reason was because that information that you shared with the mayor wasn't communicated to council. We had asked the city administrator, and he said that there was zero communication. He didn't elaborate that there was communication between the mayor and city council. So we didn't get that information.
Okay.
So I apologize for that.
I accept that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On my post, and I stick by it, with what you were, in regards to the application, you said you had 2 hours to fill that out because of a. How long did you have prior to that, though? Was that announced months in advance?
Yeah, you can't say that, and I will tell you. Do you know how long it takes to put on a festival? 6 months. So I'm sorry, I never raised my head up at all besides taking care of the theater and make sure I was providing those shows weekly and then doing also the UFO Fest. So I wasn't aware till last minute. So that is true. It was last minute. And a matter of fact, my application that I did for the UFO Fest was done under extreme duress, and I understand it was in my handwriting and crammed, and you had to spend a lot of time trying to read my handwriting. So I apologize for that too.
Absolutely. And
okay.
The biggest thing was for me when I took that vote was that it wasn't because it was a UFO Fest. I liked it. I attended it. I thought it was a good event. My biggest thing was it was an incomplete application. It didn't have a funding amount on it.
It didn't have what?
It didn't. It was incomplete. There was funding levels that weren't. I think it was requested $5,000 as you stated, but it didn't say for what, for anything else. It just said that it wasn't complete like your other application, which was. So for that reason, I voted against it. That was the only reason. It wasn't anything personal or anything. I thought it was a great asset.
You did post that you paid them. You paid them.
For the priors.
That's not.
Hold on a second, Robert.
Okay, hold on.
Sure. To your point, though, I voted yes on the first round because we switched it up. We didn't do all the 2 rounds at one time. We did 1 round for retroactive payments for 2018, and then we had the second part was for 2019. I voted against the 2019 part. I voted for the 2018 part because that was complete. That was the only reason for that one.
Okay.
And as far as you leaving, I I wish you could stay. I wish there was some way we could work with you as a city to make sure you could use the city park. If we have to bend the ordinance, if we have to approve that, I'd be all for that. And I know a lot of council members were. A lot of people were disappointed in it, and a lot of people on the council. And I apologize. It was a knee-jerk reaction when I read that NVN article. I felt kind of betrayed on that. And I thought it was a great asset for the city of Yelm, for the community that you put this on. So thank you for doing that, first of all. And more importantly, thank you for coming out here and clarifying your intent and what exactly went on. And I'll make a retraction on my Facebook and address it as you suggested here. So.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to just say, there's just the last thing is there's a little story that a sage who was in the community that they tried to do good for this community in China. And this one little guy goes ahead and accuses the little man that he's a sage and accuses him of sexually having bad conduct to a little gal who got pregnant and had a child in this community. And what happened was years later, the guy who gave that accusation comes back to the reality that he was wrong. And so he goes to the sage and says, you were scorned, you lost your position as being a great sage, you were mocked because of what I said. Is there anything I can do to make up for whatever happened, for what happened to the community and what happened to your life? And the sage said, yes, go ahead and take a pillowcase and go, and it's filled with duck down and go stand on the mountain and shake it across the village. And so he did, and he came back to the great sage, because this was a good sage, a very good person. And he goes, I did that. Have you forgiven me now? And the sage says, well, he goes, now the second half of the chore is go back and collect all the pieces of the feathers and stuff back the pillow. And then you can you have made things right. That's how bad it is when people open their mouths freely on Facebook, especially when you guys are held highly in esteem, and the effect that you have on a community. And you don't even know how many people have responded to me and what kind of slapback and horrible stuff I'm getting back from this. And I had this happen to me last year because of a person that I will not name, and they said the same quote. And you would know who that person is, I'm sure, because you sponsor him in one of your festivals. But that's, another festival. But that's another thing. I forgave him, and we just went on. We went on, and it's 3 months. We went on and we shook hands on it, because for the sake of the community, I wasn't going to drag any kind of stuff in or to have to stand up for myself to say, why would you jump to conclusions and say what you did about me? It was a mistake on his behalf. We settled it privately. But to talk about the fact that I didn't bring it out in public gives the impression that my kindness is stupidity, or that my kindness is that I'm weak. My kindness is not for that, because I'm far more powerful than you would ever imagine. And this isn't a threat. It's just that I am saying my power as a being and what I am doing for the community, I know. And I think that I really deserve to have a little bit more respect, or a little bit more care about what you say. What you feel about me and your personal level is fine, but do not speak as if you are speaking for the city. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Robert, you want to reset that to 3 minutes?
Thank you. My family served in the city for 40 years, a couple of keys to the city. I have respect for you all. I don't speak much. Jane doesn't know what I'm saying. I didn't know what she was going to say. Community service takes many forms. For some, it's a community theater. That's how I've chosen to donate my time, and I have and I do. So this group of representatives of the town, again, through Facebook, as I read and saw the repercussions, imply, state, and the town believes them, that they largely fund the Triad Theater, the events of the theater, and the UFO Fest. And people are talking of repealing, wanting refunds for prior events due to your posts. It's in your It's printed out. Pretty weird. CBS News, Fox News, NBC, all spoke, or didn't speak. They broadcast Jane's UFO Communities, UFO Fest Unites Communities last year. Got a lot of coverage. 22,000 views on Facebook in just 5 days for her event. King News 5 interviewed her. King News 5 commentators right in the middle on live TV after seeing the piece on the UFO Fest they did said, "I love Yelm." And the local newspaper didn't think that an event the size of 3 football fields was suitable to, put in their paper that week. It's interesting. So, again, in Facebook, Molly promotes Yelm Prairie Days, where 3 posts away, she called Jane a liar, a cheat. She said she's disgusted by the move. She said she's dishonest. She said she didn't create the UFO Fest. And she said that the Triad Theater has decided that it is better than Yelm. I would use the word divisive. The Triad puts on over 200 shows a year. My God, the community theater where I come from did 5. 200 shows a year, no profit, non-profit. In fact, I watch it as an outsider that tries to help. That's money out of their pocket sometimes to keep it going. And yet, Molly, you're disgusted and dismayed at her dishonesty. Moving on. Very important. Everybody says they should give the money back. To date, nothing has been paid in 8 years to date by the city to the Triad or the Triad Theater or the UFO Fest. You use past tense, Joe. That's why I clarified you. Nothing's been paid to date. Not even 10%. And that amount doesn't cover 10% of the money to put on the theater. They have. They will. It's wonderful. It's a coming, and I'm sure it's grateful. But Jane, again, I watched it. I'm in the theater. Tried to keep the theater in Yelm. She covered that. I'm almost done. I do suggest that the esteemed title of Yelm City Council not be used across somebody's personal page for a personal agenda when that person, Molly, has a financial and a personal interest in a competing event that isn't right. If I may get one more sentence out. If I may get one more sentence out. Competing event. Da, 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 da. Yes. Some of us in the theater heard you state within the walls of the theater, Jane must go. That says that your opinions have a slight bias to them. Please don't harm the city for your own personal whatever it is.
Can I say something, please?
Of course, Molly.
Okay. I don't know exactly what you're talking about with his financial interest in something else. I don't understand that.
Paying advertising with pro-law in a competing event that did the same attack before the prior event last year for 3 years were sent. Everything's undocumented. See, no, Jane, one thing I can say is everything that Jane and I are saying, this isn't opinion. It's all in writing. It's all printed. It's all been sent. Letters have been sent. It's either written text, letters sent, requests. So it's not making this stuff up. You pay and are a primary sponsor of another event through Crow Law, and that's wonderful. But that event did a vicious, foul, very, very poor language across the same forum.
Are you talking about standing room only theater, which has productions in the Triad?
No.
Then what are you talking about?
Well, as far as I know, there's 2 musical events that occur pretty much the same time that actually shared a banner last year, and I don't think it's right for me to,
I think it's the Jazz Fest.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And so on the stage...
How's that divisive?
How's it divisive?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're an advertiser, you're a supporter of them. That's wonderful. There's nothing wrong with that. But why would you lean so far in to cause...
With Triad. What does the Jazz Festival have to do with Triad?
Well, the Jazz Fest took it upon themselves last year to create... My God, people... There was a fake invoice created, okay?
So,
I don't think we want to try
Robert,
this.
Molly, excuse me, but I'm going to have to beg my
Please,
my
yeah.
authority as the mayor to run this meeting. And I think we've crossed over a very large line here where we're making accusations to people about individual actions rather than actions that were taken by a city council. So if there are no more concerns about the city council's actions, I appreciate you coming and speaking to council tonight. Are there any other members of the audience who would like to address council on an item that's not on the agenda? Very good. Then we will move along to the consent agenda, which is just the minutes from the April 9th meeting.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll now go on to new business 6A, downtown transportation strategy, and Tammy Merriman to present.
Thank you. Good evening, Council and Mayor. I'm really excited to be here tonight with the Downtown Transportation Strategy Plan. And before I start, though, I would like to take this opportunity to let you know that you have 4 of your Planning Commission members in the audience. These persons volunteer their time to be on the Planning Commission and spend a lot of time and dedicate themselves to doing a good job in reviewing all of the very exciting comp plan development regulation updates. This one was a little bit more fun, but Bob Howard, Carlos Perez, Jerry Fugic, and John Thompson are here. John Graver, Ann Warmond, and Floyd Sheldon were not able to attend this evening, but they also were very involved in getting this done. And before I go on a little bit further, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Wooten. She's the Senior Transportation Engineer with SCJ Alliance. And you might all know Shelley Badger, who is the Corporate Services Manager for SCJ Alliance. And they're with us tonight. So you have before you the Downtown Transportation Strategy Plan. We received a grant in 2017 to conduct the downtown study, and that grant was to determine strategies to improve traffic safety and mobility for pedestrians, cyclists, and transit while promoting economic development. We partnered with SCJ Alliance to complete the study, and tonight we present the plan to you. The study area includes, Grant, could you pull up the, thank you. It includes Yelm Avenue and 1st Street from Railroad south to 4th, and it includes all of this southeast section of our downtown area where we like to call it our civic section now that it's got City Hall, the Public Safety Building, the Community Center. So we focused on this area. We didn't purposely exclude anywhere else in the Central Business District. We needed to keep the focus area a little bit smaller, but that doesn't mean that we can't use all the concepts and ideas in this plan and lay it out to the other quadrants in our Central Business District. To begin with this, we started by inviting all property owners and business owners in the study area to meet, and we formed a stakeholders group. We met with these folks several times and created a list of concerns and ideas that to improve our downtown, but while still accommodating our state highway traffic. With this meetings, we created a list of projects based on what we heard, along with the obvious transportation and traffic problems we had. We heard that our sidewalks are in disrepair and they're too narrow. Bike activity is low. Sidewalks and parking should be prioritized. Also, one of the things we heard most was our trails are not highlighted as an asset to the city, and we needed more ways to let people know where to find all the wonderful things we have in town. With all that information that we received, we came up with a list of projects. There were 16. We presented that list of projects through an open house in December. And at this open house, we received some ratings on the project as well as additional concerns and ideas. I will say that was probably one of the most well-attended open houses I've been to since I've been here for 18 years. It was great. A lot of positive feedback that we received. The plan was drafted, and we presented the plan to the Planning Commission as well as several business owners in one-on-one meetings. Like I said, this plan holds 16 exciting projects. They range from low-cost projects such as wayfinding signage to show people where they can find assets within the city, and then also up to a very high cost of rebuilding Yelm Avenue from 1st Street down to 4th. Just remembering the plan is just that, it's a plan. It's got concepts on how to achieve the desired mobility and safety that we need while promoting the downtown. And in order to complete any of the projects listed in the plan, there's many issues that have to be addressed during that project clarification, such as how much right-of-way do we have, what is the design going to look like, and so forth. So there's a lot of detail that would come as we initiated each of the projects. Back to the current situation, the Planning Commission has held a public hearing on March 18th. After consideration of the comments received at the public hearing, the Planning Commission recommended that they forward the plan to City Council for adoption with an added clarification that on-street parking would not be removed until all alternate options are considered, and that street lights with planter boxes be a preference in the downtown area. One of the last changes in this was an email that I sent to you yesterday. As always, we find just one more little thing. It was my mistake that I didn't realize that we had adopted, or you had adopted, a complete streets policy ordinance last December. That ordinance has been adopted, and it's right now being forwarded to the Transportation Improvement Board so we can be on the eligibility list to be able to receive grant funds from them. In the public hearing, what we heard most and loudest from our public was one of the projects. Grant, if you could go back to the first big map. One of the projects is to achieve the pedestrian and mobility and safety for the downtown area was to increase our sidewalks to 10-foot sidewalks. On Yelm Avenue between 1st and 4th, the right-of-way is different widths in different areas. This plan was just done through aerial photos. There's no surveys done, so we don't know actual right-of-way. But based on the aerial photos, we could not achieve the wide sidewalks and the center turn lane and the 2 drive lanes on the state highway without removing parking on one side. With the location of the existing buildings on the south side of Yelm Avenue, the parking on this concept is removed from the north side, which would be in front of the bowling alley, Ellie's Jewelry, and down Yelm Avenue to 3rd Street. There's options that are going to be considered if and when this project ever comes forward. There's options for looking at additional right-of-way from the property owners on the north side. If we could, we don't know how much that would be, but if it would 6 or 8 feet to achieve a parking lane, there's the option of the city purchasing right-of-way from those property owners to achieve the on-street parking. There's options of looking at chicanes or different drive lane curves in the street to achieve parking on one side and some parking on the other. But that would require us working with WSDOT, Washington State Department of Transportation, and looking at different drive lane configurations. Those are just a few of the options that we can look at to try not to remove the parking as it's shown on the conceptual drawing. And as Planning Commission said, we would exhaust every opportunity to not remove the parking before we went forward with the plan that's in the conceptual drawing. That's kind of just an overview. I'm going to have Elizabeth talk a little bit more detail about the plan itself. And when she's finished, I'll be happy to.
Could you take a question or two first, Tammy?
Sure.
Councilmember DePinto has one.
Thank you, Mayor. Tammy, in regards to the sidewalk, or excuse me, the parking and moving the parking, is that language strong enough where it's actually in this? The language is actually in this ordinance that would, or the plan to exhaust every option. When you were talking about that, right?
So one of the big changes that was made after the public hearing was to include a whole new section called Further Considerations, where we tried to address a lot of the issues that came up during that public hearing process. And so there's a whole new section about Yelm Avenue parking on page 27. And it does state that the city is interested in having parking on Yelm Avenue because it supports businesses, it creates an active street, it calms traffic, and it buffers pedestrians from traffic. So the city has an interest in providing parking.
Sure, but does that language have any teeth to it, though?
And then it says, the existing parking will not be removed prior to exploring these and potentially other options for providing adequate and or alternate parking. In addition, any potential changes to parking would not be implemented as a standalone effort. If required, they would be part of a larger capital project that also significantly improves safety and comfort crossings on Yelm Avenue.
Sure, and I read through that definition, and it didn't seem to me, though, that if the city wanted to go ahead and move forward with it, they could exhaust their options by just looking down and saying, no, it's not feasible. There's no teeth in it that actually says this is what we have to do besides look at the options. Is that accurate, or? I mean,
I'll jump in. No, it's not accurate because it's a plan, Councilmember. It's not a ordinance that's establishing any binding resolution. It'll be up to future city councils at the time a project comes forward to look at that plan and decide how to implement it. So the short answer is it's up to you right now and a future council in the future.
So it'll be up to us during, or whoever's on council at that time, because this could be 10 years from now, 15 years, who's ever on the council at that point to determine each individual project that's on this list?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, the other challenge with this is that, again, without knowing the actual right-of-way and without knowing specifically what's located within the right-of-way, it may be that we're only a foot or two short of providing this. We won't know that until it gets into the survey and design of the project. So if that's the case, maybe we would be able to purchase right-of-way and finish everything and have it all done nice, and everyone would have parking and everyone would have the safe and wide sidewalks. We just don't know that right now. And so we wanted to make sure that the plan said that we're going to look at these things and we would not remove any of the parking without exploring all the other options.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Wood, I know we'll get to Elizabeth in just a second. I just want to make sure we get these questions fresh.
I'm just looking for a little clarification. We're talking about a Yelm Avenue First Street corridor study, but we don't know some of the information that we need to make decisions.
The plan is concepts on how to move the traffic, keep the and mobility for vehicles and pedestrians, cyclists, multimodal traffic, buses, and so forth. So these are concepts on how we can achieve the items that everyone said was important to them.
I understand that, but what I'm curious about is even in a concept, achieving this, as you mentioned, it could be 1-2 feet. We might have enough space to do this. We don't know, and it just seems like in a conceptual plan, these would be kind of important things that would be brought to the table when making these decisions, and that's why I'm a little confused.
To answer your question, it's not a design, it's not an engineering plan. Think of it as the comprehensive plan for downtown. In a comprehensive plan, you don't lay out the regulations and all the details. You're establishing a vision for that downtown. So that was the purpose, that was the intent going in, and with the scope that the council approved. Understood that. If you wanted to do the full engineering study, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars and not the 98 that we got from the state.
I understand what you're saying, Grant, but what I'm saying is if I'm going to build a fence around my property before I decide what I'm going to go buy, what materials I'm going to buy, you can rest assured I'm going to figure out where the corners of my property are as to not upset my neighbors on either side.
But when you're thinking about what you want to build for a fence and what you want it to look like, you don't. And that's what this document does. It establishes the vision for downtown, not any specific projects or specific engineering functions. This is a template that the council will apply in the future when you decide what material to build the fence out of and where to build it.
Councilmember Carmody.
So just to clarify, are we actually voting on anything tonight, or is this sort of more of an informational thing?
It is it's staff recommendation that you adopt this plan.
Okay.
And then we would move forward. The next steps are updating any comprehensive plan or transportation system plans with.
So if we adopt the plan, then we can go forward with getting exact measurements and right of way, everything else like that. Because this is just a plan. Then is that what I'm understanding?
Correct. And I would also back up and say the full council was, or excuse me, not the full council. It was on the study session, the last study session, which you were in Vietnam. So we've gone through the very specific briefing with the council. So it is teed up for adoption. Should you choose to do it, you could also continue it for like a second reading or take additional testimony, or have an additional study session if you want to talk more about the details.
I'd like to hear from Elizabeth now on what she can add to this discussion. Thank you.
Well, Tammy covered a lot, so I don't have much to say, and I did want to point out what was changed since the last public review draft. So the biggest changes were adding that additional section, which goes through in detail. It not only talks about the Yelm Avenue on-street parking considerations, it talks about the Second Street one-way direction decision. It talks about the street trees versus hanging baskets discussion that was brought up. It talks about the Yelm Avenue traffic capacity in terms of whether we, the concept is that we're not increasing the number of travel lanes on Yelm Avenue, so we wanted to discuss that in the plan. The aesthetics and character of Yelm were, that was a common concern, that the proposals in this plan were perhaps going to dilute the character of Yelm, and so we wanted to clarify that that was not the intent. And then also the idea that truck turn restrictions could be possible in the future once the Yelm Loop project is complete, and that could help downtown as well. So those were all the things that were brought out, and special attention was made to discuss those. There were also some small changes made to the design details, which are all in the appendix of the plan. Those are all the more detailed discussions about each and every one of the projects on the project list to kind of be consistent with that design consideration section that was added. But other than that, most everything has remained the same. There's an executive summary that I don't think was a part of the public review draft, but is now part of the plan. So.
Okay, any further questions from council? How about from the audience? Is anybody here tonight that wants to address the council or ask any questions about the downtown corridor study? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I do.
Come on up.
Okay.
Nice to see you.
Now, we went to the meeting with the Planning Commission, and we figured it all out, hashed it all out. They wanted 10-foot sidewalks on the north side, everything. They were going to take away the parking. They decided that to leave the parking, cut the sidewalks down smaller and everything. And it was pretty well, the Planning Commission, we all decided on this. And it was all figured out. And now it looks like it's just going to be passed on down till later. You know, that's what we went to the meeting for, is to figure this all out. And there was quite a few people that did this. And what I would like is have the Planning Commission guys come up here and talk, speak what we figured out and everything, and you guys decide on it. You know, that's my idea. This passing it down further and further down the line doesn't help anything. And I could be wrong. But that's all I have to say.
I appreciate your just coming up and speaking to the council. I'll just reflect that the Planning Commission did have public hearings on this, and they did take a lot of different opinions into consideration for this project. Not all opinions can be represented by the final product. So the overall opinion of the groups that met, some were subcommittee groups of local business owners, and some was a larger group of the Planning Commission. It was then brought to the City Council at a study session. So a lot of people have had eyes on this, and what's being presented to the Council tonight is a best representation of that overall opinion on what the corridor could look like, not necessarily will look like, but these are some of the best options that this group has been able to promulgate. So that's what is being passed on to Council tonight, is to decide on the adoption of that plan. And I'll just make a quick analogy, if I may, is that similarly we've made parks plans in the past that were very nice vision of what we'd like our parks to look like. But as the money came forward and we were able to start design, we had to modify those plans considerably till we end up with, by golly, a splash park that's being built as we speak across the street. So these plans are not in any way etched in concrete. They are a guideline for us and future councils to consider. Yes, sir.
Well,
oh, please. Could we have you come back up so we can catch you on the mic, though?
how far down the line is this project, or you have no idea, or what? You know,
Tammy?
I mean...
there is no idea when this project may come forward. It all really depends on what funding becomes available. If there's a pot of gold out there that we could do everything all at once, I'm sure the city might want to jump on that pot of gold. However, but you just have to go out and find the funding and do the projects that you can.
And
it could be several years. It could be many years.
Okay, then if it's several years or many years, then I don't have to worry about it, huh?
Well,
Let's hope you do.
Absolutely. If and when funding becomes available, and the engineers start working on the design and start doing the right-of-way surveys and so forth, then the adjacent property owners would all be involved at that time and would know from beginning to end what it's going to look like.
Well, then I should just shut up.
Appreciate it. There's a comment from, oh, no, we're good. There was another comment from the audience, please.
I'm Stefan Ellie, and we own the jewelry store that is would be affected by losing that parking on that side. And I already presented to the Planning Commission, and what I want to say is I did a quick, I'm not a city planner, I'm not a bureaucrat, I don't do those type of things, but just to find out what is potentially, what your company might possibly know from public data, I hear there is no way of finding out what the right-of-way is. There is no such thing as surveys that could be found. I spent about half a day just looking up, calling the Washington State Archives, library guys. They sent me forward, and I found this place. It's called the Thurston County Archive. And there's about 20 surveys that have been done since 2000 on that street, between 1st and 4th, on both sides. You have not found any of those? They were not traceable? They don't mean anything?
Not include looking at the right-of-way in terms of what was actually available. We did know that there's roughly 60 feet of right-of-way in every one of your streets, and that's what we worked within.
But there's very precise surveys that show the right-of-way, and they show this survey done with that property on that side, this one on that side, in 20 different ways. And so I just don't understand why there's this iron holding of the parking has to go away on the north side, and on the south, there's no mention of parking could go away on that side. I don't understand why that stance is so strong, since there's about 300 parking on the south side being created according to this plan, and only about 100 on the other side. If that comes to that, if sidewalks will be installed to support people walking from that parking to Yelm Avenue. So I just don't understand why there's such a strong stance from your company to support that south side parking is cannot be negotiated. There's no way that could go away. But north, we cannot do anything for north unless the owners sell their land off. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I think the way you guys argue that, and the way the language has been adopted after the last Planning Commission meeting, and I would love to hear from some of the Planning Commissioners how they feel the resolution that they asked for has been implemented in the language that is now on page 27 to 29, whether that is representing what they wanted to have represented that day, because I don't think that's true. So that's what I want to say about that, because I want the council to be informed properly, and over here and over there, they have a lot of the language, they can say a lot, have a lot of minutes to say things, but I think it's being presented in a very particular manner that pushes in one direction. I know it's a plan, but when you have bureaucracy running for years, the people that are against something and they don't stay in the bureaucracy and get paid day by day to be there, they will actually lose interest or focus, and all of a sudden, whoop, there was this day you didn't know about, and something happened, and the thing is gone through. So I don't like to have that vague, it's just a plan, it's just far away. I don't like that to be a reason to not address this issue, that affects everybody on the north side, which is my backyard in this moment. So I'm very concerned. Thank you.
Thanks. Elizabeth?
I appreciate the concern, and I thank you for bringing your comments here today as well. I think, it was not an engineering study, it was a planning study, and that is a large reason why the plan was done. Looking at the aerial photos where the roadway alignment is currently today and where presumably the property lines are based on the aerial photos, that was how this plan was developed. I think the section that we added, the intent was to really make it clear that the city has, the intent of the city is to provide parking on the north side of the street if it is at all feasible and possible. And there are not only, there is the option to swap north and south if we can work out the alignment and WashDOT is okay with alignment. So it was on the table, it is in the plan that, it was not intended to target the north side parking. That was just a result of the existing alignment of the roadway in the way that it is laid out currently. But I think the intent was to provide many options, including, looking at the south side not having parking, the north side having parking, looking at both sides having parking, looking at a chicane, which could accommodate parking at a portion of the north curb. So that was the hope and intent of the new section.
Councilmember Carmody. Oh, come on up can you come up to the dais so we can capture you on the mic?
Is it possible to just accept there's a lot of room in the road? Like, is that on the cards?
For what?
To just go, we don't have enough room. Just drop the parking thing and work with what you have? Like, is there too much invested somewhere along the way where you can't change that idea?
So the plan...
I don't understand right away and why the sidewalk has to be wide, but I know not many people actually use that sidewalk. It's not like a massive thoroughfare. Mm-hmm. So can you just leave it and just ditch that idea altogether?
So the idea to provide 6 feet of sidewalk on both sides of the street, which would be what you could accommodate for if you had parking on both sides of the street.
Oh, I don't know what you mean.
So you're saying ditch the sidewalks?
No. Oh. Leave it how it is.
Okay.
And fix the sidewalks.
So
they're wide enough. So do they legally have to be wider? Or why?
Legally, they only have to have 4 feet of clear width with intermediate passing zones of 5 feet. That's the legal minimum requirement. The idea behind this plan was that the downtown area is a pedestrian, multimodal area that supports business and is walkable.
Okay, but it is walkable. I see people walk past there all day. So I'm just saying,
Mr. Mayor?
Instead of just keeping on with
I understand, Grant. So we don't want to get in too much of a debate. Is your question answered to some degree of what your question was?
No.
No? What question is it that you're...
It's in the plan and there's all these problems with it. Why can't you just keep it how it is designed but make it better? Fix it, or I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
So I'll address that in that, again, what we're presenting, what the Planning Commission, the citizen groups that have come together and spent a lot of time on this and what staff has done is create a plan that's very flexible and malleable.
So
and that
part of the flexibility is this...
Not necessarily anything that's going to happen, and we can't even say that there is enough room or not enough room. It's a general concept of what this group, sees as the potential for improvements on the Yelm corridor. I would encourage people to not get too locked in on any particular aspect of the plan because, again, as was pointed out earlier, when an actual action comes before the council, we find that pot of money that says we can now work on aspects of this plan. Whatever council is seated at that time is going to have the same process all over again, including public hearings, before anything is done to alter one aspect of that street. So there's a lot of protections in place for our businesses and our residents.
I was just offering why don't you just leave it to the table, because
Mr. Mayor.
It seemed like...
Yeah, Councilmember Wood.
Have you ever parked in front of Ellie's Jeweler there?
I have my business
right
next door. Actually.
I drive a full-size vehicle, just a regular pickup truck, and I actually shop with it over at Ellie's. It's my jeweler. But what I'm telling you is when I park in front of there, pulled all the way up to the curb, I've got 2 tires still hanging out into traffic.
That's your,
There's,
no one else does. That's your truck.
Well, it's not just my truck. I don't drive a monster truck or anything. My point is we have a problem there, and we're trying to figure out a way to address it. That's why we can't leave it as it is, because it's not functioning because...
I don't think there's a problem, and I work there every single day. I have this much room when I park, and there's that much room between me and the traffic going
I'd be happy to drive over there afterwards and show you my normal-sized truck.
I don't feel scared. I open my door
I
without
get
even
that.
looking, and I know I'm not going to get hit.
I get that. Unfortunately,
On Monday, they park on the curb, and there's plenty of room.
They park on the curb. That's...
Yeah. Well, I don't think they need to. There's enough room.
Councilmember DePinto.
Thank you. No, I get your comments completely. My question is a different one. It's addressed to SJC, if that's all right.
Well, I'd like to make sure that our guest here has have presented her opinions on this fully.
Well, yeah, but obviously...
We're going to never have an end to this this conflict of opinions on this, but we've certainly heard yours.
That there's plenty of room, and I would...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember DePinto has a question for staff.
Thank you. And that point was well received by me, by the way, ma'am. So I see a lot of this plan is towards this. Was it north side of this?
North side.
So excuse me. I'm sorry. North side's the bowling alley side. The south side's the okay. So on the north side, though, there's only one block that's been suggested for additional growth, pretty much, or in this plan. Why is there so much on the south side versus the north side?
Are you talking about the study area?
Correct.
Well, again, we had to keep the study area in a set, confined space, and so we didn't study the entire downtown central business district. We took the area, the civic area, where the most activity was happening, and used it. And also, then, if this plan is adopted, these same concepts can be applied throughout the city in the other areas of the central business district. It wasn't that they were not going to have anything. It's just that this was the study area and
the scope of it.
Yeah,
sure.
So it's not purposely excluding the entire central business district. This just was a small piece of the pie.
And to build on that, the money specifically comes from WashDOT through the Surface Transportation Program and is related to transportation on state highways. So that's the bounds. There are 2 state highways in that area. So that's why it's focused further down, because the southern area borders 2.
Sure, but like right over here, these areas, what do they have to do? Why aren't they more a block upward or north?
Potential cut through between the 2 and traffic improvements to connect the 2 roadways.
But why wasn't that addressed up above too, though?
Because that's not a state highway on the north.
Those aren't state highways either, though. North of that, is it?
They all have to relate to Yelm Avenue and 507.
You're telling me a block north of that state highway doesn't have any relevance?
It could have been extended potentially, but that ship sailed years ago when the council approved the scope.
Okay. As recommended by staff.
Mm-hmm. And in consultation with WashDOT on where the money came from.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Carmody.
Question for CJ. So about the right-of-ways on Yelm Avenue, I get that this is just a plan, but what happens if the right-of-ways come back and, they're like completely not in alignment with the plan, and you guys have to make some radical new planning decisions here? Is that in the scope of this thing that we'd be approving tonight? Or, so I'm guessing that Yelm Avenue is not set in stone.
The exact design of Yelm Avenue is not set in stone.
Okay.
But the plan was developed using where the existing roadway is, where the asphalt and markings are, and it was also developed assuming 60 feet of right-of-way, which is what we know is at least available on Yelm Avenue.
And so we don't know what the right-of-ways are on Yelm Avenue.
We know there's at least 60 feet of right-of-way.
60 feet. For which section of Yelm?
So the first block between first and second, there is more right-of-way available on that block.
Okay.
Going between second and fourth, we assume 60 feet of right-of-way.
And that includes like all the way from, so it's 30 feet from the center line of the street?
Presumably.
Roughly. Okay.
Councilmember.
I might as well say something too. This is a plan, I'm understanding, it's conceptual, it's a vision. And even at a higher level, vision is the idea that the city has that we can improve the look and feel of our city, the beauty of it, the walkability. The businesses will be more abundant, more productive. That is the vision and the goal. And I think this is just a place to start. And it certainly sounds like there's plenty of mobility and flexibility within it that we will all decide in the future. So I just think this is a good place to start. And we want it to improve the businesses, not take anything away from them.
We have 4 members of our Planning Commission here. You folks have done a lot of work on this project and many others, and we're grateful to you for your time and efforts. Would any of you like to address the council tonight on any of these issues you've heard? All right, Jerry.
Mayor Foster, members of the Yelm City Council, for the record, I'm Jerry Fuchik, Chairman of the Planning Commission. We looked at this plan as a vision of where we wanted to go, not in the nuts and bolts of it, but a vision. But we also noted that there was a disparity in parking, and that was they needed the parking on the north side of the road. Why? For public safety, and additionally for the businesses to survive. Cross the road and you have a good chance of getting run over. Do we want that? No. So that's why you want parking on the north side. But this is nothing more than a vision of where we want to go. Do you have any questions?
Councilmember DePino.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. So, as the gentleman earlier stated, was this plan the same plan that was worked out with business owners at that last Planning Commission meeting when this was addressed?
This is basically what it said. We did show the reason why they said on the parking is to leave it as it is. We did discuss this and felt that the north side parking should remain if at all possible at the expense of the south side parking, as there is parking, although they lease that parking, i.e. Habitat for Humanity, but they do have parking. And they do not, their customers there do not need to cross 507, which is dangerous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sherry. So, Council, before we can continue discussion, I just want to remind Council that although it is listed as an action item, the Council has the option of adopting this as recommended by staff or moving it to another study session or a future Council meeting if that's also your desire. Councilmember DePino.
Thank you, Mayor. One point we didn't address here is the fiscal impact to the city. We're talking over $10 million over here. Is the exact amount closer to 13 or so?
I think you're correct.
So one thing, there's a lot of projects on here that I particularly like. The Activated Alley, I think, is a really cool concept. The additional parking over here by City Hall, it's great, makes sense. And I see this, the huge arch over the trailway. It's like $1.7 million. That's more than our City Hall. It's almost twice the cost of our City Hall. These are expensive projects here. So by approving this, yeah, it's just a plan, but it's a plan that we're going to enforce here eventually. As soon as funding's available, we're going to go ahead and move forward with that. So for the fiscal impact, I think we really got to look hard at these projects and say, is it worth $1.7 million for that archway? Is it worth $765,000 for these improvements on Mossman? This is a lot of money that we're spending here, and I think it would be prudent to go to another reading of this.
Any further questions from Council? Comments? Councilmember Wood?
Yeah. After listening to all the conversation and listening to the chair of the Planning Commission, I think he's made it very clear that this is in fact a vision plan. Nobody's feet are being held to the fire on sticking to this plan. It's just a point at which we're saying, look, we'd like to, as Councilmember Kaminsky stated, we'd like to keep our city viable, beautiful, and safe. So with that being said, I move we adopt the Downtown Transportation Strategy Plan as recommended by the Yelm Planning Commission.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Since we have a council of 6 this evening, we'll go with a roll call vote. Councilmember Curry?
I'm in favor of it. Aye.
Councilmember Carmody?
Aye.
Councilmember Stillwell?
Aye.
Councilmember Wood?
Aye.
Councilmember DePinto?
Nay.
Councilmember Kaminsky?
Aye.
All right, so the plan is adopted, and thank you once again to Planning Commission and all of the citizens who spent as much time as they did, and of course SEJ Alliance, our friends who put together this corridor plan. I'm sure we'll be revisiting this in many forms in the future as funding and motivation becomes available. There we go. Thank you, folks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Which brings us to old business, of which none is scheduled. And so we're on to department updates. We'll start with Mr. Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. A couple of quick updates for you. As you know, you received the invite about the groundbreaking tomorrow for the playground and the splash park. You may also see that the contractors took advantage of the rain today, which softened the soil, and they already broke ground for you. So it'll be a light lift tomorrow. But we know how important the splash park and the playground is for the entire community. We know how many people came together to make this happen, from the visioning, the planning, the design, the funding, the execution. So we're excited to have this small, very brief groundbreaking ceremony tomorrow, which will really be a brief community celebration. So hope you and everyone can join us tomorrow at noon. I also wanted to take the opportunity to remind folks, as the Mayor said, we have Arbor Day on the 26th. We have the Home and Garden Show on the 27th and 28th. Just encourage people to come out to those events. There's a list of all the community events on our website that we'd love for folks to just promote and track and utilize to stay engaged and help connect the community. Also wanted to forecast for upcoming council meetings. We have a couple of things. First of all, we have the Arts Commission ordinance. It took us a week longer to get it into that final form that we said we would do. It was presented in a draft that was essentially a concept for you. We've put it in final form that's consistent with our ordinance and Yelm Municipal Code verbiage. And so that'll be published and sent out to you for a first reading or a final reading, however you want to take action on that. We also have the Emergency Management Plan, which has been approved by the state. That will come back to council for your further consideration. The last thing I wanted to update you on is I remember last year you created the Salary Commission, an independent, unbiased organization to look at all the elected officials' salaries. That work was halted when there was some concerns of conflicts of interest, things of that sort. Some questions were raised. We had a person resign, a new person applied, you approved that person, and the work essentially picked up where it left off. So there was a gap there. They've had very productive meetings, a meeting, and really I think that it'll take them one more meeting to come back to you with some recommendations, again, in an independent, unbiased fashion that will determine the salaries and benefits for
I'm going to clarify a point, and then I'll count. That's not a recommendation from the Salary Commission. Can you clarify that, please?
Determination.
Determination. Thank you. Councilmember DePinto.
Thank you. Are these open meetings, these Salary Commission meetings, or are these closed behind-the-door meetings?
They're as open as anyone wants them to be.
Could you let me know the next time a Salary Commission meeting is occurring? I'd like to attend.
Okay. Just making sure it's attending the Salary Commission that is determining the salary for the commission and the elected officials. Right. Okay. Glad to include you, and I'll just send an invite out to all the rest of the council as well.
We'll actually check with our legal counsel on the on the idea of that, because it's a salary commission that's affecting the wages of the city council, and it could be seen as undue influence of the presence of a council member or the mayor. But we don't know that, so we'll make sure that it's cool legally to do it.
I figured you would say that, and if you could record that, that would be great too. Then I could just listen afterwards. Thank you.
What else you got, Mr. Graham?
That concludes my comments and updates for you.
I thought you were going to do the emergency management.
I did.
IEMC?
Yeah. No, we'll let you do that.
Well, we didn't pay attention to that part.
Yeah, you were going to do it.
I yield to the good councilwoman.
Councilmember Curry, what you got?
Okay, I was at the public safety meeting today, as was Michael, maybe. Anyhow, the chief did say they will be having a home and garden show booth in conjunction with Thurston County Emergency Management, and they would hope everybody would stop by at the home and garden show this weekend. And he's hoping to get us the SWAT interlocal mutual aid agreement sometime in May for our approval. And Tad, you're next. I'm leaving the rest for Tad and for Joe.
Councilmember Carmody.
Okay, so I attended the Intercity Transit annual planning meeting last week. It ran all morning and most into the afternoon. Mostly we talked about our fares. Specifically, the fare boxes are breaking down, and the company that made them isn't making them anymore, so they're literally buying parts off of like eBay type auction type things. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Just to let everybody know, we do, Intercity Transit collects about $1.5 million in fares every year, which ends up being only 2.5% of their total revenue. We looked into different types of alternatives. For example, having a cloud-based account on your smartphone that you could just sort of wave at a box, or buying into Orca, stuff like that. By either buying into Orca or installing a brand new system is going to cost about $1.5 million anyway. And then maintaining those systems is going to be another $700,000 a year. So we're trying to figure out a way to make this at least feasible, for these fares. They're such a small percentage of our revenue that it's hard to justify spending that much money just maintaining them. And then second, because of the sales tax increase that the Thurston County area voted on last year for the 0.04%, it passed by right around 65%, which is basically considered a mandate. And so Intercity Transit is looking at redesigning and evaluating the mission statement to make it a little more powerful and a little more reflective of that mandate, something along the lines of becoming the primary mode of transportation in Thurston County, as opposed to just providing transportation options. So really working at trying to decrease traffic in Thurston County, making it easier for everybody to get around, and increasing those options for everybody. That was that. It was really interesting, and it's an amazing time to be on that board because we're really able to make some big changes there. The finance meeting was canceled, and that's all I got.
Molly, I had a question for you. I know I've been on the discussions before with Intercity Transit. Are they still considering the option of just doing away with fares altogether because it's almost a wash between what the fares generate and what they cost to collect, which would open up the ridership to a lot more people?
Well, they don't want to get rid of that portion of their revenue altogether. Mm-hmm. But what there is on the table is some kind of corporate partnership. So, for example, and this is being done in other cities across the United States, big corporations are actually partnering with the transit systems to say, like, well, okay, Kaiser Permanente will pitch in $100,000. Providence will pitch in $100,000. Maybe Amazon could pitch in $500,000 and make up that difference, mm-hmm. so that, Intercity Transit isn't losing money but then it's also considered a prepaid fare. It's already paid for by somebody else, not the rider.
Mm-hmm.
So that's on the table, but it that has not been made a decision yet, and it's still, I mean, it's politically sensitive. So, yeah.
Thank you. We know what Councilmember Colt is up to tonight. We wish him and his family well. Councilmember Stillwell.
Well, last week I had a grandbaby, 9 pounds something. I'll be in big trouble. I just can't remember any information other than his name. So size and all that eludes me. But I also last week was fortunate enough to attend a meeting, and I'm sure that the mayor will talk about this, with Congressman Heck and his aide coming out, and he was going over learning about what we had going on in the city and how he could help. And I was just really, as a business owner, I was really impressed that he cares about the city of Yelm. It was really interesting to listen to and be in that meeting. And also, as a currently serving Army reservist, I was able to sit in with the Boys and Girls Club and the veterans organizations regarding the old City Hall. I will tell you just a summary of a very, very, very long meeting that the Boys and Girls Club seems to be ready to move forward, and there's a tremendous amount of work that the veterans organizations need to do to coordinate and their expectations. So that was really interesting, and I was there because I speak the acronyms and all the languages, and poor Michael Graham, I had to remind all the people in there that he's just a civilian. So anyhow, that was really interesting. And then today, the public safety meeting, it was pretty good. We received a grant from the port for a message board. So when we have a disaster or something like that, traffic, we can put this giant board up with a message, how to get around it and what's going on. And chat with the chief. There's 20 or more people attending that every time. Everybody needs to go. As I've said for every time, it's great. I try to get there earlier and earlier so I can actually eat before the questions come. And now I'm like eating at 10:30 in the morning or something. So go if you can go, and it's really interesting to get perspective from other people. And that's it.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Wood.
I had the opportunity to attend the Lacey City Council meeting as the Mayor Pro Tem and accept an Arbor Day tree from the Mayor Pro Tem of Lacey.
What kind of tree did we get? Whoops.
A live tree.
It was green.
A tall tree.
It is green. It's tall.
They typically.
I believe it was a cottonwood.
Thank you for doing that.
I also, I attended a TCOM meeting. The last TCOM meeting I attended, one of the things we discussed was we had some funding removed that we had anticipated receiving from intercity transit. As it turns out, there was a scripture error in a contract written from both previous TCOM administration as well as previous intercity transit administration, but I'm not sure if they got a new accountant or a new bean counter. But as it turned out, due to a scripture error, we are providing them free tower location through 2021. I just thought that was fair that the community and the public know that, being their idea is to let the rest of us go ahead and support the entire intercity transit system at this point. Being there at last discussion, I thought I recalled about 10% of their revenue was brought in by ridership, but I'm hearing now that it's 2%, 2.5%. So that's I felt I needed to share that with all that are listening to understand that, the intercity transit helps out a lot of folks in our community, in our county, but the emergency 911 system helps us all out. And I'd hate to run into a situation where, due to some lack of funding that we had counted on, which isn't going to happen, we do much better budgeting with TCOM than that. But it's a frustration, and I just wanted to share that. And that's my report.
Councilmember Carmody has something she'd like to add.
I actually wanted to clarify, because we did talk about that. Apparently what happened was TCOM overcharged them for many years. And so now there's this extra amount, and they said, Intercity Transit and TCOM talked to each other, and they said, well, we could pay you back all this money now, or we could let you use the towers for free. And rather than, collecting on those overcharges. Intercity Transit just said, well, you know what, just let us use the towers for free for a couple of years, and we'll be good with that.
That's not exactly how it was explained to us on the administration board by our director, but that was I can see where it could be construed that way, but that's certainly not realistic as to what happened, because it's based off of a contract shared with other entities as well besides Intercity Transit. And it's, like I said, it's due to a scripture error. It's something that we've looked at in many different ways. Our attorneys looked at it as well, and this was a decision made rather than tying it up in court and potentially costing TCOM even more money due to the fact it was, in fact, in contract, just a scripture error. So, whoever wrote the contract miswrote some wording.
I'll be hoping that you'll report at the next council meeting on the bill that's advancing through our legislature and is at the governor's desk now about increasing the taxing authority of TCOM. I don't know if you're prepared to talk about that tonight, but perhaps we could get a report on that next meeting.
Certainly.
That'd be awesome.
Certainly.
Councilmember DePinto.
Thank you. And perhaps our lobbyists could come in and give us a report on what they're doing up in the legislature for us, including that.
Well, I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, perhaps our city lobbyists could come and give a presentation regarding what happened up in the legislature on our behalf. A couple meetings were canceled. I think Councilmember Stovall and Curry explained the public safety meeting pretty well. Other than that, I just appreciated those that came in today. We had a pretty big audience today, and I thought it was pretty important. Some of the folks there that UFO Fest that spoke, it was good to hear that perspective, and it was appreciated. And also from our business owners standing up for what they believe in with their parking and how it's going to impact their businesses. I think that was also very important. And thank you for the Planning Commission as well that came out to support their proposed plan too. So that was it. Thank you.
Councilmember Kaminsky.
I attended the Public Works meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we just basically looked at the park plan and the splash park and had a little update. And then Thurston Thrives, we had Kaiser Permanente come in, and they wanted to see how they could collaborate with all the members of our group to integrate more into what we're doing. And so when I get the results of all that meeting and the input that we had, I will let you know.
All right. Very good. Thank you. So on behalf of Councilmember Carmody, she couldn't be both at the Intercity Transit meeting and the Nisqually River Council meeting, so I was happy to go to the Nisqually River Council meeting in her stead. And we, the only thing of note, and I know this is terrible, but we had a volcanologist there named Pat Pringle who's written a book about Mount Rainier. And we've all been scared about the wrong thing. The 8.0 earthquake's nothing compared to what Mount Rainier is going to do to us in the next million years or so. But he was very detailed on how the Lahars have reached Puget Sound right down through Nisqually Valley. So we've got that to look forward to at some point. But it was a great meeting. I appreciated being able to see my old friends at the River Council on your behalf. And I just wanted to touch on the two visits that we had the day before. Congressman Heck himself came and spoke with a couple of us at City Hall. It was a great visit. We also had a representative from Senator Patty Murray's office and spent an hour with us talking about all things Yelm and what we feel that they can do for us at that level. And it was a great conversation to have. So we appreciate it when they take time to come down, sometimes with very little notice, but that's okay. The doors are always open. And we appreciate that. And that's all I have, unless there's good of the order from anyone. Cody's not here to do it, so.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, staff.